So hello MMS 2012, is everybody having a good time? Everybody enjoying Las Vegas?
Yeah.
Is this not the best MMS ever? Isn't it? Absolutely awesome event. So I hope you've made it to Wednesday, guys. Give yourself a big round of applause. So I just want to thank everybody for coming today, and sorry about the confusion about the session, but most of you seem to have kind of found your way here. So welcome, and welcome to our session on Advanced Analytical Reporting with System Center 2012. So all the fluffy, nice eye candy that we're going to stick on top of this fantastic new private cloud solution that we're going to go back to our businesses and deploy. So my name's Gordon McKenna. I'm actually a CEO at Inframon. And I've got my learned colleague here, Sean Roberts, who's going to lead most of the presentation today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And so I just thought I'd take you guys through the agenda before we start. We're obviously going to do introductions, which we've pretty much already started. We're then going to go and move on to a role play. And the role play's idea is to set the framework and set what we're working towards throughout the rest of the demonstrations. We're then going to do an overview of System Center Analytics, and we're going to be looking at some of the places where the data is stored and how we can untap that data. We're then going to be talking about, it's all about the app, which is a very pertinent phrase, and talking about how we can monitor things and collect the data that we need to report upon. We'll then be moving on to displaying real-time application data. So we'll be showing some of the new features available within Operations Manager to display the application status and put it up into a SharePoint portal. Moving on, we'll be going into some service level management, and in particular both around Operations Manager and into Service Manager as well. Finally, we'll be moving into trending application data. So this is looking at the historical perspective. What sort of data is there that sits within System Center? How can we get to it and look at it over a longer period of time rather than what's happening right now? Moving on, we'll be going into some compliance reporting, because compliance is, even though we're in the cloud, still a very important thing. And we'll be looking at the GRC process pack and some of the information that we can pull out of that. And finally, we'll be producing a unified single portal.
Wow.
Today, we're running all this stuff on two little shuttle machines that we've built here today. These shuttle machines are two 16-gig boxes. They've got SSDs, so fingers crossed the demo gods will be smiling on us, and we'll be switching between these. So we have a real-life little miniature private cloud right here.
It's our portable private cloud.
So in with introductions, my name's Sean Roberts. I'm a director at Inframon. My background is business intelligence. I've been working in business intelligence for probably about 11 years now. I came across System Center by accident one day and then started building some reports back in MOM 2005 days, and since then that's predominantly what I do. Big emphasis around operational reporting, so understanding how is IT operations going, look at budgeting stuff as well, and SLA reporting. And I'm joined today with Gordon McKenna, who needs no introduction.
Thank you very much. So, I'm a fellow director at Inframon, so a bit of background about us. We are a System Center specialist, a Microsoft Gold Systems Management Partner based out of the UK, and we just do System Center for a living. So we don't do any Link or Exchange or SharePoint. We're very, very focused on System Center. I'm actually myself an MVP in System Center Cloud and Data Center Management, bit of a long title, but it basically means that I live, breathe, sleep, eat System Center for a living, much to my family's annoyance.
Okay, great. Oop. So we're going to start with a little role play, and the framework for this is we have already built our private cloud. So it's deployed and we've onboarded 2 services. And I, as the IT pro, am responsible for pulling out the data for that private cloud for whatever my manager wants. Gordon will be my manager, and unfortunately, Gordon's had a phone call from a customer.
Couple of customers.
Couple of customers.
Unhappy customers.
Okay.
So, Roberts, remember me? I'm your boss, the one that pays your wage packet every month.
Yes, Mr. McKenna.
So, I've had a couple of customers on the phone. So, we've got this fantastic new private cloud that's going to make us loads of money. And we've onboarded the new stock trader service, and we've also onboarded a new e-commerce site, Dinner Now. And I've had both of them on the phone saying, they love all the new flexible deployment options they've got and all of the nice management they've got on top of their services that we've rolled out. But the applications are performing slow, and they're trying to understand what they're being charged, and they're not really getting any reports out of there. And actually, you know, since I paid all this money to put all this infrastructure in for my private cloud, I've not got any reports. You know, where's my fluffy dashboards? I've got a massive plasma screen by the desk and I've got nothing to go on it.
Okay, a common scenario, the boss buys the plasma screen and then architects the solution. And he knows he needs something, but he's not clear on what that something is, but he knows he needs it yesterday, and he's not quite sure what that actually is. So what we're going to be doing today is breaking down all the different things that he may need and showing how we can pull that out. When we embark upon this, any reporting project, it's really important for us to get an understanding of who the audience is. So through this scenario now, I'm going to get a few people come into my office as I try and understand what's going on with the problem.
Hello, Sean, mate. How's it going?
Yeah, all right. Good. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad. So I've just basically onboarded these 2 new services. I put all my great System Center 2012 tools in. I've connected them all up. So I've got like VMM going into Ops Manager, and I've got all my tickets going into Service Manager. But I've had that horrible boss of ours on the phone again, and he's kicking my behind because customers are complaining that the apps are running a little bit slow, or they've got no visibility into billing. Hey, do you know what? I'm just a mere IT pro. I need some help, mate. I need some data.
Sure. So this is a common problem here where we have the IT pro. And what he needs is he needs access to real-time data or near real-time data, and he's looking for something very granular. So Gordon, what we'll be doing today is building out a dashboard for you in SharePoint that will give you real-time data and real-time state to help you better diagnose this problem.
Oh, cheers, mate. Owe you a pint later.
No worries. The next person that's going to be coming in and seeing me is the service manager and the service owner.
Hello, Roberts. It's Clive Cloud, the service manager.
Hello, Mr. Cloud. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, you know, but we've rolled out this new private cloud, and I've had that horrible boss on the phone to me again, and he wants to know, you know, what the availability and performance of the service is so we can relay that to the customer, and he wants to know how long it's taken us to resolve these great new instances that we're getting in on our service manager. And, do you know, I've got no data. I just need you to tell me what's going on.
Sure, Mr. Cloud, no problems. What we'll be able to do for you is look at some of the data it's in Service Manager to get an understanding of how your service is functioning in terms of time to resolve, time to respond on the tickets. I can also produce for you some very high-level red, yellow, green numbers so that we can see how we're trending over time. And by the way, weren't you in the army at some point?
Yeah, I was. 15 years, man and boy.
So did that make you private cloud?
I was a private cloud, actually, funnily enough.
Right, so...
That's a bad joke, isn't it? Really bad joke.
Next person we have in is the capacity planner. Now, the capacity planner has a different need from the service manager and a different need from the IT pro. The capacity planner is trying to understand how we can solve the bottlenecks going forward.
Hello, Sean.
Hello, Mrs. Cloud.
How you doing?
All right. I just saw your husband, Mr. Cloud, in here.
Oh, Mr. Cloud, he's been a very naughty boy this week. I can't... So, what did Mr. Cloud have to say then?
He just needs some dashboards and things like that. But how can I help you with your capacity planning?
Well, you know, I need some metrics. So, I've got to basically, I've been told that there's some problems that I've got to fix, and I need to understand how to build in capacities. These problems don't happen in the future, and I need to be able to understand, you know, how the capacity that we've got now, how that's been affecting our overall infrastructure.
Okay, that's great. Do you understand the private cloud?
I've been living with him for 25 years, so I think I should by now.
Excellent. So we're going to give Mrs. Cloud long-term trend data so she can get in there and try and understand where the bottlenecks are and how she can fix them going forward. Next, we have our security and compliance person coming in to see me.
Roberts!
Yes, Mr. McKenna?
So, it's great all this private cloud stuff that you've been rolling out there, but I've got to lock it down. You know, it's great giving all these flexible deployment options and self-service portals out to the users, but I'm the person that is on the hook for the PCI DSS compliance this company has to meet. And I've got no idea what you're doing and what holes you're opening up. And you're bound to be opening up loads of holes. And I'm going to have to come in and lock you down all over the place. So you need to show me whether this brand new infrastructure that you deployed is actually meeting my compliance controls. Otherwise, I'm going to come down on you like a ton of bricks.
No problems. We had the GRC process pack that's available to us that I'll pull together today. And that's going to pull out DCM data from Configuration Manager and put it up into Service Manager. So we're able to measure our compliance within our private cloud and report upon it, most importantly, when the auditors appear.
Well, that's fine. I'll have that by 3 o'clock today, if you don't mind.
No problems. Finally, the last person that's going to come in and see us or speak to us on the phone is the external stakeholder.
Say hello.
Hello, Mr. Nguyen.
Thank you. And that's Mr. Annoying, not annoying. Thank you very much. Fantastic, fantastic new infrastructure that your team have delivered to us. And, you know, we actually got an influx of users today, and I was able to scale right out to meet that demand. But then when it scaled back in, you know, I couldn't understand what was going on with that. And I need to understand where the billing's coming from, you know? It's great scaling out, but I'm sure you're going to charge me more money for that. So I need to understand now what the cost of me scaling out is. So I understand next time whether or not to let the people do that and whether to let my users suffer.
Sure, no problems. What we have available to us within System Center 2012 is chargeback billing. So we can pull off some reports for you so you can get an understanding of which machines are consuming all the resources and therefore costing you the most amount of money within your service.
That sounds fabulous.
Excellent. So as you can see from our little role play, even though we're in a new world, a cloud world, we're still faced with a lot of the same problems that we faced before. We have such questions as how do we monitor and protect our services? How do we show the real-time status of those services, and what's the best way to put it up? People are after a lot of trending information too. They want to know how I performed this period compared to previous periods. And this becomes more important because with the cloud we get the flexibility of having our applications scale up and down according to demand. So we want to know how we performed in peak periods as well as low periods. We're also interested now in measuring our support team performance. So this is some interesting stuff that we can do now around time to resolve, time to respond to tickets, all sorts of different measures that we're able to configure up in Service Manager for reporting. Coming towards the bottom of the list, we also have our control objectives. So this is stuff around any compliance that we need to meet. And a number of organisations, even though they're going to a cloud-based structure, still must report upon their compliance against various different regulatory frameworks. Finally, of course, the big important thing is how much is it costing me? So I would like to see some chargeback reporting and understand where I'm incurring my costs. So what can I measure within System Center 2012? Well, primarily we can measure service availability. So we define our services, they come across into Service Manager, and using the data that we have within Operations Manager, we can measure how available that application is. We can also measure the service performance, and this might be underlying performance, so we're looking at the actual cloud platform itself, or we can be looking at such things as synthetic transactions and how long that took to complete going through the application. And then the other key area that we have is the service function. And this is the stuff that I was just alluding to earlier, which is around how did we perform when answering tickets, making changes, making releases, did we hit our SLAs? So it's all about the app, and really the first step before we can do any reporting is to get in there and make sure we monitor and protect our application correctly with System Center, and from there we take it and then we can get the reports off the back. So I'll hand you over to Gordon for this piece.
Thank you, Sean. So my favourite thing, all about the app. So in our private cloud environment, we've obviously deployed System Center. We put in all our cloud fabric and our infrastructure, our nice new storage, our network load balancers. And we've actually deployed 2 applications. We've got a name you might not have heard this week, the Stock Trader application. We've also got another application called Dinner Now. Now, Stock Trader is a financial type app that handles people's portfolios. And then Dinner Now is a very interesting little e-commerce site that allows you to search for local meals and order them up online. So we're using a number of different components in here. We've got Virtual Machine Manager. That's what we're actually using to deploy our fabric and also to deploy our applications, and we're using scalable service templates. We've also got App Controller, which we're providing out to our end users so that they can come in and they can basically scale up and down the services as they see fit. Also with Stock Trader, we've got some of those components in Azure. So a typical thing that we're seeing customers use Azure for today is to burst out into the cloud. So we've got one e-commerce customer that we're working with that basically when they have sales or they have marketing campaigns, they actually just scale out into Azure and then scale back in and then rely on their private cloud infrastructure for the rest of the year. We're obviously using Operations Manager in there, .NET applications that we're running in the cloud, and we're using application performance monitoring to do that really deep diagnostic monitoring of the application so we can provide information. So obviously we're servicing out Stock Trader, and also a requirement for our business is to be able to protect those applications. So we're going to jump over and have a look at a little bit of this infrastructure that we've got deployed. So I'm going to jump over to my little mini private cloud here. And actually what I've got here is Virtual Machine Manager. I don't know why I'm looking up at the screen because it's on this one here. So we've got our Stock Trader Cloud, you can see here. And within that Stock Trader Cloud, we've got our scalable deployment template that we've put in place for our customer. And if I go into the library, I can drill in a little bit here. You can see there's my Stock Trader service. And basically, if I open the designer there, I can see how that's kind of laid out and understand the kind of scalability options that we provided to our customers. So you can see here, for example, I've got on my web tier, I've got a default instance of 1 that's deployed for our customer, and I can actually scale that up to 5 instances. So I can do that little burst if I need. And actually, we've got some Azure services for this, so that if we hit that 5 and we still need more resources, we can spin up some IIS roles in our Azure platform as well. And obviously, one of the key things that we've gone in and done with Virtual Machine Manager is we've gone in and actually hooked that into Operations Manager, and we've also hooked that into Service Manager as well, so that we can kind of bring some configuration items up from Virtual Machine Manager that we can use in our service level management process. So I'm just going to flip across to my second node here, and get the right mouse. And actually what we've got in here is a couple of items. So we've got Data Protection Manager, and you can see there that I've actually set up a little protection group, and I'm actually managing or protecting all of the nodes that appear in my service template. Now we've done a little interesting thing under the covers here. So one of my issues is I need to, as those templates scale up, I need to be able to back up those new tiers that are coming on. So actually when we deploy the template from Virtual Machine Manager, we have a little post install script that runs that actually deploys the agent and goes into DPM and runs a protection group, so we can add that to our Stock Trader group. And you can basically see there that I'm looking at particular databases within there, and I've got some recovery options that we provide via the self-service portal to our end users so that they can recover data from within Data Protection Manager. Now, if I look across now into Operations Manager, so we've got a number of things on the go in this console here. First thing that we've enabled is we've got .NET monitoring. So I've applied a template against our applications, and I can drill in and look at performance events. So remember when we did the role play at the beginning, the IT Pro was really looking for some deep diagnostics around being able to understand why the application was running slow. So I can go in and I can look at things like performance events per second. I've also done some specific monitoring down here for my dinner now application. So I've got one that's in my staging environment here before I put it out into production. And again, I can go in and view alerts that are in here. I can view the overall state of that application, and I can provide that information then to my end users. And we're going to look a little bit later on at some of the analytical tools that are available with Operations Manager to give you long-term trend analysis of what's going on in there as well. So other things that I've got jumping around in my console here, you can see here that I've done my Data Protection Manager integration. So where we were looking in Data Protection Manager earlier, I can go in and view alerts that have occurred. So you can see here that I've got a DPM synchronization error that's occurred. And I've got some more information, and it's telling me that I can't get remotely to my server, and I've got some nice product knowledge within here, and I can jump in, and I've got an external link, so I can go out and look at other information around that backup. So my support guy or my IT pro that's running that has a lot of information, and I can go in as well and view things like the states of the disks that are going on. I can look at individual DPM servers, And further down here, I can look at things like the data sources that I've got running as well. So I can see my stock trader. They're not running at the moment, my stock trader VMs, but I can understand the individual data sources that I'm backing up within there. Finally, down at the bottom here, I've also integrated Virtual Machine Manager. So I've got a view of my clouds and the overall health of my clouds, and I can view things like my cluster health and my storage health, and I can also go in and view the individual state of virtual machines that are running in my Virtual Machine Manager environment, and I can check on them and understand why they're running slow. I've also got performance data in here. So you can see this is very cloud-focused based on the VMM data. And I can look at things like host performance and cloud performance. And bearing in mind with things like host performance, if I've got VMware or Xen in here, I can also go in and view that data alongside my Hyper-V data, so I can understand across all of my infrastructure what's going on. And that's as well as me managing the individual virtual machines that are running in my environment as well. So the final thing, just to cap this up, and the final integration point that we've got for bringing in all these data sources together is within Service Manager. So I have a Virtual Machine Manager connector coming into Service Manager, and I have a connector from Operations Manager coming into Service Manager. So you can see that stock trader service that's running in there. I can view that as a business service within Operations Manager. So when I deploy my stock trader service in Virtual Machine Manager, that data then gets pushed across into Operations Manager, and then I can, from a Service Manager perspective, I can start to map things to that business model. So I can add things like service components that might be connected to that overall model. I can look at service dependencies. I can add related items. And I can begin to, you can see here, we've had some infrastructure requests that have come in to add additional items from the self-service portal to my service template. So I've got a complete end-to-end picture of what this service is doing. And as well as that, I can look at individual cloud services. So this cloud services is actually from the Cloud Services Process Pack. Has anybody deployed that in their environments? That's terrible that there's only one hand up. Guys, when you get home, look up the Cloud Services Process Pack. It's a complete end-to-end private cloud solution that sits across your System Center 2012 environment, and it allows you to do service request fulfillment of private cloud items through Service Manager and using Orchestrator, and all displayed in the self-service portal in SharePoint. Other things in here which are relevant to our little conversation at the beginning, I've got my compliance and risk items. So this is the IT GRC management pack for Service Manager. And how many people have deployed that in their environments? Okay, I'd definitely take a look at that. If compliance is something of concern in your organization or something that you have to give to somebody, this is a complete set of compliance controls, mappings to authority documents. It hooks into Configuration Manager, into the desired configuration management packs that you might have running that are evaluating how compliance is being done in your environment. And it gives you data in the place where you really want it, in your service management, so you can wrap processes around it. It might be that we pick up something that's non-compliant in our private cloud infrastructure or within the services that we deploy, and then we can actually remediate actions to actually make that compliant again, using Orchestrator workflows, for example. So that's my 50,000 feet tour of System Center 2012.
Thanks, Gordon. Oh, am I? There we go. Thanks, Gord. So now we've configured up our application. So the next step, after we do that, is to look at, now we've configured up with the products, where does all that information go? And then how do we untap that information and display it? So this section I'm just going to go over around the data sources. So the two key repositories we have within System Center 2012 is the Service Manager databases and the Operations Manager databases. Now, we see down the bottom, we have all the different products that connect up and into System Center. So through Operations Manager, all of these products are monitored by having an agent on those machines. And that collects all the key information such as alerts, performance, and state changes. They are then pulled together into a distributed application model and then come across to Service Manager via the connectors. Now, there's two connectors for Operations Manager that go across into Service Manager. There is a CI connector, configuration item connector, and what that does is pulls across the distributed application models and turns them into business services in Service Manager. There is also the alert connector, and the alert connector pulls alerts from Operations Manager and turns them into incidents in Service Manager. In addition to this, within Service Manager, there's a connector for Active Directory, and this pulls across all users and computers. We have the Configuration Manager connectors. Again, there's two of them. One pulls across software and hardware, and the other one pulls across DCM packs. We have the Virtual Machine Manager connector. This Virtual Machine Manager pulls in all the information around hosts, virtual machines, and cloud/fabric resources. We have the Orchestrator connector, which is really used just to expose Orchestrator workflows or runbooks to Service Manager so they can be used within activities. And then Data Protection Manager doesn't have a direct connector to Service Manager, but does come up through Operations Manager, and a lot of that information goes into Service Manager. The way we can access the data out of the Operations Manager databases is there are two databases. There is the OpsDB and the Ops Data Warehouse, and the Operations Manager Data Warehouse holds 13 months worth of data. And we can pull the data out of these databases via either the Visio snap-in, which was available to 2007 and now has been revamped and is available for 2012. We have the SSRS reports that we all know and love. And they are still there, and there's new and improved ones that have come out. And we can expose data up through SharePoint, and this is using the SharePoint widgets. On the Service Manager side, again, we have a number of SSRS reports that pull the data out, but the new component that we have available in 2012 is the Service Manager OLAP cubes. Now, the Service Manager OLAP cubes uses SQL Server analysis services, which is a business intelligence tool for analysing large amounts of data very quickly. And it's really used for a function called slice and dice. And this is where we can pull this information out of the tool and display it in any tool we really want that's compatible with it, and we can drill into the data very quickly. The Operations Manager Data Warehouse, just to quickly recap, no real changes in 2012 for this. We have three key subject areas that are stored in here. We have state data, and the state data measures the percentage or the number of minutes in every hour that an object is in a red, yellow, green state. We have the performance data, and this is for pretty much any performance counter information that we collect. And then we have alerts. For the state and performance data, they are stored at three different aggregates. We have the raw data, which is there for 3 months. It then writes an hourly aggregate on the fly for us every hour and a daily aggregate of these. The Service Manager Data Warehouse has a few different key components to it. So what runs the Service Manager Data Warehouse is we have the key jobs and processes, and these are controlled via the management packs, and you'll see them in the database or data warehouse view within the console. These run and they effectively transform the data from the various different databases. So we have the Service Manager database, and the first process that happens is the MP sync. And the MP sync syncs the data warehouse with the database. Now, the management with the two management servers that we have within Service Manager, the Service Manager Management Server and the Service Manager Data Warehouse, are actually two separate management groups. So that means that the data warehouse can be multi-tenant. So you can register multiple Service Manager instances with the same data warehouse, and all the data will go to the same place. Once the jobs move the data from the Service Manager database, they go into a staging, they then get transformed and ultimately end out in the data mart. When they're in the data mart, it employs a classic data warehouse design. And you may have heard of this, it's called the Kimball method. And what this is essentially we have a fact table which is surrounded by dimension tables. The fact table is where we collect information about something that we want to measure. So it might be the number of incidents or the number of SLA breaches. And the dimension tables hold data that describes what's in the fact table. So this could be something like the user that created the incident, the geography, the computer it relates to. And it does this automatically for us and transforms all this information out. If you wish to do so, you can actually get it to do this yourself by writing your own packs, which will transform the data to the data warehouse and ultimately go and build out a whole cube for yourself. So this shows the process, the way the data gets into the OLAP cube. So we have the Service Manager database, moves over into staging, goes into a data mart, and ultimately it goes up into the cube. There are actually multiple cubes. within Service Manager, not just the one. And these are all, again, controlled by the management packs themselves. So I'll just jump in now and quickly show you. Right. Yep, wrong one. Excellent. So we see here we have the Data Warehouse tab. And this is what controls all the data warehouse functions within Service Manager. Now, just a few little troubleshooting tips for you. You must be aware that because the data warehouse server is querying the management server, it needs to be able to establish a SQL Server connection. So be aware of that. If you're seeing that jobs are stalling or they're not running, check the event logs, and more often than not, it's because of some sort of connectivity problem one way or the other. The other thing that can also come up is security and run-as problems. So what's being run, the run-as account that's happening on the data warehouse server doesn't have access to the Service Manager database. In here, when you do a fresh deployment of Service Manager, the first and only job you'll see in there is the MP Sync job. And this job synchronizes the management packs from the Service Manager management server to the Service Manager data warehouse server. As it does that, and as they run and discover things, they will go and create new jobs themselves. And we see the jobs here all have various different categories. Now, the way you may have heard of the term ETL, extract, transform, and load. And this is exactly the same way that it works with this. So the first jobs to run do the extract, and they are the ones that are pulling the data down from the Service Manager database or any other registered data source. It then loads this data into the staging database, and then the transform.common job runs, and then that moves it to its final destination in the data warehouse. From there, the cubes will execute, and then they will pull up the data themselves and run the jobs and bring it up and build. Now, they are set to run once every 24 hours, whereas the rest of them have varying different intervals from 5 minutes to 1 hour. Another tip for you, if you're finding that these jobs are not completing or there isn't any data in your reports, go through and disable all the jobs and then just run the MP Sync job and then run each of them manually just to get a clean through all the way through. And it will bring all the data through. At that point, the watermark will be set in the data warehouse and only the delta will go through after that. Right, so displaying real-time status. How do we do this? So, well, the first thing, we have a number of different ways of doing this. We have the DAB modeling through Operations Manager and displaying it up through the SharePoint widgets. When we're displaying real-time data, we have to obviously define what it is we want, capture it, and then publishing it. So defining it will be defining the service, which we would do through either through the distributed application model. Capturing it will be obviously dropping agents out there and doing all that stuff Gordon just did, and then publishing will be putting it up into SharePoint. So on the distributed application model, what is it? So a distributed application model is effectively a way of describing the relationship between the components of our service. We can do this within the Operations Manager console, but that doesn't cater very well for cloud scenarios. And so as a result, what has just been hot off the press released this week, although it has been kicking around in the community for a little bit, is the Visio MP Designer. Now, the Visio MP Designer allows us to design a management pack within Visio, export that management pack, and bring it up into Operations Manager. It is particularly good if you have cloud services. Now, the reason it is good, for cloud services is it allows us to define a template for the application, and then it will discover every instance of that application. So if we have, which maps very closely to actually what happens in the cloud, where we have an instance of an app in our library, we then go and deploy multiple versions of it down, and we just want it to automatically discover. It's very useful when you do have that templated way of your application fitting together. It is somewhat limited, to be honest, initially, so it won't fit every single scenario, but it will hit sort of 8 or 9 out of 10 scenarios for you. If you need to do more complex stuff, then obviously use it as a starting point, and then you can jump in and start designing the MP yourself.
Okay, and this is just a little thing. So this is a brand new addition for Visio, not to be confused with the Visio snap-in for Operations Manager, which allows you to bring distributed application models or Visio designs out and design stuff that you put on the dashboard. This is designed to build MPs within Visio using a drag and drop technique. So I believe if anybody saw Belson's session this morning, you would have seen him introducing this to you. It's a brand new feature for 2012.
Okay, so with the publishing data, like I mentioned before, we have the thick console, we can view stuff in there. We have the web console, we have the new SharePoint console, and then we have the Visio add-in. Right, so let's jump over to the demo.
It's very cool, this.
Oh. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to my Operations Manager box. Okay, when you install the Visio Management Pack Designer, you see that there's an icon on the desktop. You have to open it up via that icon because that preloads the add-ins for you. You will get some challenges if you try and run this at the same time as you're trying to do the Visio snap-in. Now, you see the first object that it puts on here, which might be, I might be able to zoom in for you, is just the details about the management pack. So I can right-click on any of these, come in, define shape data, and we see properties here that relate to the management pack. And if anyone's actually ever built a management pack, you'll recognize these. You have a management pack name, you have the ID of the management pack, and you just put all this information in. So we'll just pull up our test Vegas MP. Okay, we can add a description, and then just do OK. Now, within the quick shapes on the left-hand side, we see we have a number of patterns available to us. So if we have a 3-tier application, we could actually just come over here and drop this pattern down, and it would instantly drop the objects down onto the screen for us. Now, what happens here is we see we've got the distributed application at the top. So again, we just come in here, we define shape data, and we give the application a name. And you'll see throughout all of these various different objects that we drop on the screen that a lot of it's registry-based. And so the idea behind this is it was written by Brian Wren, who, if any of you guys know him, has done a lot of good stuff out there in the community in the past in regards to discovery via registry. And the idea is being that when you deploy your application, your cloud-based application down, it puts in these values in the registry. They are then used for discovery of the objects, and then it just automatically appears. Now, our application looks slightly different from this one because we just have a single-tier application. So for the single-tier application, I'll just build it out. We have our distributed application at the top. We then have a server role. Now, the server role, we want the monitoring to roll up using the health. We say when that server role goes red, I want that distributed application to go red. And I'm going to use a worst of scenario. Now, I might have multiple different roles, and I can define that against a server group. Now, again, if we come in here and we go define shape data, we see how to find it, and this is the key. We can either find it via registry key, we can find it by registry value, by a server role, or a WMI query. It then finds these things, and then we have the monitors that we can attach underneath this object. So the 5 key monitors that are available at the moment is we have a Windows performance monitor. So for these servers, this might be my web front-end servers. In here. And then I just defined my performance counter against this. And here we see we've got just all the values that we're looking for, how we want to measure this, what the counter name is, what the instance name is, what the measuring interval is. Do we want to create a performance view for it? Do we want to create a report for it? And most useful, I think, is actually we can create a defined schedule. So if we have only to measure our SLAs between 9 till 5, then we can define the schedule here. Yeah, we've got a question? Yeah, thanks. Right, so we can pull out, we pull out here, so doing right click to get that data. Now, what we are most interested in typically is we have the website monitor and we have a database monitor. So this is, we're going to be clicking, just simply hitting our website to see whether it's up and hitting the database to ensure that it's there. And then we build our connections to here to measure how our health rolls up. delete out that group.
So all you people that thought you'd never be able to design a management pack, how easy is that?
Oops. And then I just need to quickly flip my add-ins around. Right, so then we see we have this management pack tab over here. And at this point, we can do the check diagram. Now, this will then go through and just make sure the logic is sound. No doubt, because I just did this quickly, it probably isn't. But once we get through these, we then click the Generate Management Pack button. It will then go and generate a management pack down into a file for us, and then we can import it. Now, I've already taken the liberty of doing this and importing this one that I created earlier into my Operations Manager console. And so from here, we see the test.mp, right? And we see this automatically created this all for us. So it created our active alerts for all the monitors we've done out there. I defined a single server role. I found one instance of that server role in there. And for that, again, we can break into that server role there. It also created our distributed application, so we can just right-click, open our diagram view, and up comes the distributed application for us. And we see there's our server role, and underneath it, we'll see our two tests, our database, and our website monitors. So very quickly, we can knock up a management pack using this tool, and we can start to get a simple dashboard out of it. And the way we do this is we've created that. Now we wish to create a new dashboard. So we come in here, create a dashboard view. Now we see we have these various different layouts available to us. We have the classic column and grid layout that we can go and just add things to later on. We have a service level dashboard layout, and we have a summary layout. So I'm just going to do a column layout. So give it a name, just 2 columns for the time being, and create. So this will then go and create the dashboard, and then we'll be able to add the new widgets to the dashboard. And once we've added the widgets, we'll save it down, and then we'll publish it up to SharePoint. So here we have click to add widget, and we see all the cool new widgets that we have available to us in 2012. Right, so here we have an alert-based widgets showing us alerts around our subject area that we're interested in. Incident details, so we can have a summary and an incident details underneath it. Instance details, sorry. We can do a performance view, objects by performance, and a state view. So for this one, because we wanted to create something that's simple, just red, yellow, green, we'll put up a state view up there. Okay, now it's going to ask us for so we'll just add the dinner now servers in there. We can filter this down and just create that.
So this would be a kind of great view for my service owner or even for my customer, yeah?
Yeah, and then we'll just do a very simple performance view because everyone likes a graph. So we'll put in a performance group view here of CPU utilization. Again, we'll do the dinner now. Object, so we'll just go and choose the processor, counter percent processor time, just add the total processor time. Over the last 24 hours, we can do a lot of changes to the chart, but we'll just accept the defaults today and create. Right, so what I'm going to do now is just, oh, there it is, that's the screen I wanted, is go and find this view in the Operations Manager, just closed it, in the Operations Manager web console. And the reason for that is I need to get the URL, so then I can add that to the web part, so then when I embed the web part into the SharePoint site.
So I think it's 2 things here, isn't it? There's, you're collecting data by creating that MP, which I can then push up into Service Manager. I've got a new object that you've created through the distributed application design, which will appear as a business model, which I can add metrics against as well. And then, of course, you've got a dashboard designed for my guys that they can access through SharePoint, yeah?
Yep, that's right. Okay, so just going over up my SharePoint site, back to this one. Here's our new Silverlight-enabled Operations Manager web console. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this before. Pretty much similar functionality to 2007. But we will see the dashboard view in here. As it's signing in and struggling, our poor little private cloud.
You need some elasticated provisioning on your web console. Huh?
Okay. So what we'll do now, when this loads up, is we'll grab the URL when we go and look at the view, drop back over to our SharePoint site, create a new page, and in the SharePoint site, we've already deployed the Operations Manager components. And so we'll just go in there, add in a new web page, add in the web part for the dashboard view, put in the URL that we get from here, and then that will just display the information up in SharePoint. So here we have our dinner now. Dinner now application. So our dinner now dashboard. Okay, so we see our alerts and our performance view. So I can just grab this, the URL up here, come back over, come in here, and then, so this is just my SharePoint site, so this could be a team site or wherever. Come in here, do new page. IT Pro Dash. Okay, just save it and then reopen it. Now, here I can add in a web part. So when we click on web parts, we see that there's now Microsoft System Center available here, and we have the Operations Manager Viewer, Dashboard Viewer web part. So we put in add. As it loads away.
And so, you know, looking at this then, so I've got the same view in my thick client that I've got in my web console that you're now going to put in SharePoint, yeah?
Yep, that's right. So we just drop in the URL for it and click OK. And then we just go back to the page, save and close. And then this will go away, load up our dashboard, and now it's embedded into our SharePoint site.
I'm going to customize all this, so if I wanted to kind of put, you know, the company logo on it or boss's name on it, I can do all that as well.
Because it's within the SharePoint framework, we can do whatever we like and add whatever framework we like. Okay. And so there it is. So there, very quickly, we've been able to capture the data using the Visio tool, create the MP, load that up, and then go and create a dashboard view and publish that up into SharePoint.
Very cool.
Okay, so next one demo that we're going to moving on to is we're looking at the real-time. We've looked at the real-time status of the application. Now I want to look at some things around service levels. And just to recap, there's a number of different ways we can measure service levels, and it all really depends on what we're trying to measure. So we have service level agreements, or SLAs, and typically these things are external facing that we are forced to do with external customers. Generally, there's some sort of financial penalty or some sort of penalty if we don't meet that. And there is a one-to-one relationship between an SLA and the customer generally. Operating level agreements are internal facing agreements. This is between various different support teams or various different parts within the same organisation. Now, the whole idea behind setting these up really is that it increases our fact-based decision making. So we can see where we're missing our SLAs. And it's no longer an anecdotal thing feeling that performance is slow. We can actually see that it's going slow because it's missed its SLA. And ultimately, rather than being used as a tool for beating people over the head with, we should be using this as a way of increasing our investment effectiveness by identifying the areas that are the bottlenecks and then directing money, investment, people, or processes to solving those problems. We got service level tracking within Operations Manager. You're probably aware of this if you've configured it before. Now, Operations Manager takes all the objects. We can then configure up SLOs or SLTs against these and then pump this information out into service level tracking dashboards. We used to have the SharePoint 2007 snap-in for displaying the SLAs. This has been upgraded with an SLA widget.
He's got a widget.
We now have service level management within Service Manager. Now, service level management works around the concept of queues. So we define a queue, which is the way of grouping various different things together. And then we can apply the service level management to incidents and changes. And then again, we push that out and it gives us our service level measurement and increases our investment effectiveness. So without further ado, because I'm fast running out of time, I'm going to jump straight back into demoing this. Right, so I'll just start with the Operations Manager SLT and we'll add this onto there. So I'm just going to come back down to authoring and I'm going to create a service level tracking object. So I'll give it the dinner now SLA. Come back over here, target it at my dinner now distributed application. Click next. Add myself we have two different types of SLOs that we can create. Monitor ones, which are against time in state for an object, and collection-based ones, which is trying to measure a performance counter of some variety. In this one, we're just going to create a simple availability. So we'll come in here, availability. Okay, and create, next, and finish. Okay, great. Jump back over to our dashboard and add the SLA widget back into it and republish up to SharePoint.
So if I add something else to my dashboard, does that appear in the SharePoint console? It's changed as well?
Yes, that's right.
So I only have to change it in one place, yeah?
That's right, yep. So add a cell, add the SLA widget to the cell. Which seems to have disappeared. So what we'll do is just quickly knock up one SLA dashboard for ourselves. So we'll create a new dashboard view, service level. Yep, so then we'll choose the SLAs to add on the SLOs. So there we see we have the dinner now. Okay. Next, and create.
And you know, I might well want to put this on a separate dashboard as well, though, because my service level manager probably isn't going to be interested in state and performance, only where the SLA's been met.
That's true. So we can create this and then put it onto a different part of the portal using SharePoint security model rather than Operations Manager's security model, so that people that wouldn't have access to Operations Manager can still get access to this data. So while that's just chugging away there, I'm going to drop over to Service Manager quickly and demonstrate to you how we create the SLAs in there, the service level management. So we drop over to the service level management pane, and in here we have service level objectives. So I'm going to right click and create a new service level objective.
And what's the calendar metric bits in there, Sean?
So we come across them when we're actually creating the service level objective. We have the ability to create calendars. So you might have a support operation that's 24/7, but actually certain business services are only supported 9 to 5. So you can create the various different calendars against that for measuring the availability and performance of the application. So I'll create the service level objective, come in here, next. Give it a name, so dinner now, select, target it at a class, and for this one, I'm just going to target it against incidents. Next, we have our queues. I won't jump into there, but basically we define a queue within Service Manager, which is a way of basically grouping up types of objects. So we have our cloud queue that I've already created. We go next. We have our calendar. I'm going to apply the global support calendar, and the metrics are these metrics that I've defined. So I'll just jump in here and create a new metric. And the metric might be time to respond. Again, targeted at the incident class. Now, what we are able to do here is define what the start and end date is for that metric. So we're going to say the start date for time to respond is actually the date the ticket was created. If we wanted to use a different metric, we could change this here and do it as whatever we wanted it to be. And then the end date, we'll have as the resolve date. Oh, actually, I'm doing respond. So first responded date. Okay, so we created our metric, and then we come in next, and we click create. And that's now created our SLO. What will happen in 24 hours time is when our OLAP cube goes and reruns, that information about that SLO will now appear in our OLAP cube as well. And so we'll be able to do some reporting against the number of incidents that have met their SLO and a number of incidents that haven't met their SLO.
Can I be alerted about that as well? You know, because if I probably, as a service level manager, want to know, rather than waiting 24 hours, that instantly when that's happened.
Yep, we can configure that up fairly easily using, again, the same queues. And then we can do notifications of them. So just jumping back over to Operations Manager, we see that the console has pulled up our dinner now service level agreement. As we can see here, the application has met its service level, 65.106 at the time. So we see early this morning when the machine was off, it was evidently out. And then now it's come back in. And we'll see over time that that will go up. We could then go and just drop this into the same dashboard, into SharePoint, just like we did the other one, following the exact same steps.
Is there a magic button so I can make it green for my boss as well?
Yeah, a screenshot.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, now we've created this SLO, just jumping back over here, we can come over into our work items, and it will start categorizing all of our tickets in here against our incidents. And we have incidents with service level breaches, so those that are outside of the SLA, and those with warning that they are about to drop out of their SLA. And then we can report upon them using the OLAP cube. Okay. So trending historical data. So we've looked at very much now how we're going now, you know, what's the real-time application status, how's my SLA. Now we want to look at more the broad, longer-term stuff. So within Application Performance Management, which is the formerly known as AviCode stuff, we have a tool in there called System Center, called Advisor, App Advisor. And App Advisor gives us that long-term trend of how the application performed, the number of exceptions, the number of incidents we have against that. That information can then be used for profiling as well, so we can get an understanding of which procedure calls within the application, which methods within the applications were the worst offending in terms of time. Within Service Manager, we have Service Manager analysis libraries. And the Service Manager analysis libraries are essentially Excel reports that are used off the back of the OLAP cubes. And then we save them back down to the analysis library, and then people can look at that data and refresh that data. Right, so I'll jump in and show the analysis library. Sorry, I got the wrong one, did I?
Yeah, it's free.
Right. So, just coming back over to Service Manager now. So again, coming back down to our Data Warehouse tab, we have analysis libraries in here. And this is where the data is stored. So we just need to add a library. It's similar to a VMM library. So we do reports, and we just need to give it a UNC path that's accessible. So /lon sm1 /reports. And then that will create the library for us, and that's where the objects will be stored. Now, I can come over to my OLAP cubes, and then this is where all the data is stored in the OLAP cubes. And we see that there are a number of different subject areas. And again, these come from the management packs. So we have the change in activity management cube, obviously does what it says it does. Power management pack cube is an interesting one when you've got the power management options configured. Configuration items, work items, software update, and service manager catalog. So I'm going to just jump over to work items. And we see the status that these are processed, so it means that they've run, and we see the last time that the data was refreshed into them. Right, and over on the right-hand side, we have Analyze Cube in Excel. So we click on this, and what this will do is this will pull up Excel and will automatically establish a connection to the OLAP cube. So in here, we have a vast amount of data available to us within the OLAP. And so the easiest, obvious place to start is the incident DIM. This is the one I always start at. So we come down here and we can do incidents breaching SLO 215, and it's that same data that we saw on the other screen. We can then come down into some of the dimensions, and it's just effectively a pivot table. So we can save this data down as we like, and we put a display name against it. Oh, it's not very good. Come down to priority, that's more interesting. So we have 9 of the priority 9, which we configured up using our incident types, and here I've pulled up the name of the incident, which a lot of these are coming straight out of our operations manager environment. So we see for the service heartbeat failures, we saw 17 of them, and of course, because it's just a pivot table, we can just double click on these when the demo guys are smiling, and it will drill through and show us the underlying data. We can then go and save this back up to our UNC path, up to our share, and then that will then appear in our view in the Service Manager console up here in the analysis libraries, and other people can go in there and grab that data. Right, so fast running out of time, so I'm pushing through. There are lots to get through today. The GRC pack overview. So with the GRC pack measuring compliance, the way we do that is, first of all, we configure up a configuration manager, and we create configuration manager DCM packs. And these DCM packs effectively allow us to measure the configuration drift against the server. There's a number of different processes around compliance management. So obviously we have the governance frameworks, and this is really around how we report, who we report back to, and how we measure ourselves against it. We have risk management, which is the process of identifying the risks in our organisation and then measuring our compliance against that risk management function. The GRC management process pack essentially has a number of different steps available to it. We identify who the GRC authority is, so who's responsible for this, who's our executive leader. We then come down into auditing. We audit ourselves against that. The information then goes to an auditor who will then, the compliance manager, who will then look at the data and extract that data and then define what he's going to do against that. Now these are the ongoing steps that we do, and again this is essentially a reporting function. So we then generate our reports that measures how compliant we are, send it back up the chain to the leadership, and leadership can review these IT reports, these IT GRC reports for us. So finally, I'll jump into the demo in a second, we want to create a unified portal. So how can we pull all this information together? And one of the tools that we have available to us is Performance Point. Performance Point is a part of SharePoint 2010 Enterprise Edition. It was originally a BI product that Microsoft bought a few years ago. And what it is essentially is a way of us displaying data from multiple different sources. It's not just restricted to System Center, we can do it with everything. So essentially it has a number of different components, but we run our server-side processes in SharePoint. It is just a SharePoint service, so we just activate the service, it turns on, and then we can go in there, publish the dashboards up, and then give people access to them. So I'm going to jump over to that demo now. Right, so this is the dashboard designer. I'll just jump onto my other box. So the dashboard designer itself is a click once application. So I'll just show some things down and give us a little bit more breathing space.
Good thinking.
Okay, so I'm just going to browse to my site first of all. So we deploy our SharePoint site using the business intelligence template. And when you deploy a SharePoint site using this, you'll see that this is the first landing page that you get available to you. Now, if you come over here to build and share reports, you can see that there's a start using performance point services. When you click on this button, it then is a click once application and launches the console. Now, the console has two key areas. We have data connections, which is the way we establish a data connection to a source, and we have the performance point content. So the first thing we do is we create our data sources, and this data source here, change and activity, the cloud and the work item ones, are looking at those OLAP cubes that we have that have been generated for us from Service Manager. So I've created those up. I then come over to my performance point content.
So just a question, Sean. So the cloud services one, that comes in with a cloud services process pack.
That's right, yeah.
So that would be where I do my chargeback billing element, because we have a concept of a cost center.
That's right.
With a cloud
yeah.
services process pack.
That's right. We pull that information out of there.
Okay.
Now, there's a number of different things that we can pull out, a number of different object types we create. We start with a report, and then reports are put into dashboards, and scorecards are also put into dashboards. And then once we've got our dashboard, we publish this up to SharePoint. So I'm going to jump onto this report. We see we have a number of different types. We'll just do the analytical chart, choose our work item, and click Finish. Now here you'll recognize these exact same things that we saw in our Excel workbook. And these are the measure groups. So I'm just going to drop over to Incident Dim. And we see here we have the measures. And let's just have a moment. Let's jump back over. Apologies, I should have reopened this when I shut down the machine. Let me just relaunch it. What we have is you'll see the measures, so we can drop the measure we're interested in, so the number of incidents, and then we can drop the dimensions that we're interested in, which might be the service or the location or the type. And all these things are things that come out of Service Manager, which are just essentially Service Manager lists. So if there is a type of incident that we want to change, or we want to put in a custom type for our organization, we just go back into Service Manager and we change the list that drives that drop-down field and add in whatever we like for it.
So could I use other System Center products? Because I know a Virtual Machine Manager, for example, has an OLAP cube capability. Could I hook that into here?
We can hook into that. We can hook into Operations Manager. You can hook into any data source that you'd like. A lot of organizations that I deal with, we start with this and then we very quickly move on to adding other data sources. So we'll see we have the existing ones I already have. So Work Items Cube, I'll just bring that into my workspace. Come back over here, create a new report, Analytical Chart. Right, that's better. So I'll come down to my incident dim, and we'll just drop incidents open in the series. And then again, come down to our incident status. Drop in our status. So this is just a very quick snapshot of all the incidents, what the status is of the incidents that are in our OLAP cube. So I'll just save that one down and give it something, incident status. And then we'll create another one. Incident dim count again, and then we'll do resolved by. So we can see who resolved the incidents. Oh, or resolved by the same person. Maybe not resolved by. We'll do created date, resolved by me. Right, so we'll just show a breakdown of how many incidents were created by day. So save this, incidents by date. I then go and create myself a new dashboard. And just because we've got two things in here, and then put our two graphs in there. Obviously, I'm doing a very simple version. There's lots of advanced stuff we can do. We can link these two items together, so when you click on one, it drills down into the other. But we'll keep it simple for now. So just click Save. Right-click Performance Dashboard, deploy to SharePoint. Okay. Now that's going to go and create all those items in my SharePoint site for me, create an ASPX page to host the web parts and deploy it up.
Simple as that.
So now they're in here, we can give this as something for someone to jump into, someone to access it externally. For all these, they can just go and export the data to Excel, export it to PowerPoint. We can right-click on here, we can change our report type to be a pie chart, if that makes more sense. And it really gives them slice and dice access to the data. I'll just change it back to a grid because there's always someone who wants to get the grid data in there. We can see that. And then we'll just change it back to a line chart. It also gives you the ability to drill into the information, and we can drill down to, again, any one of the dimensions that we had. So who was it assigned to on these incidents? Probably active is a better one. Drill down to on my incident.
So this is exactly the kind of stuff that capacity planners want. Anybody kind of doing long-term trend analysis in the environment. Yeah.
Exactly, and then they can just drill down into this and see for those alerts that are open, we've drilled into seeing where they were open from. And we can see that it was a handful from the console, but the vast majority came from Operations Manager. And so this is the way we're using this tool that we can, and SharePoint ultimately, that we can create various different web parts from our various different products and surface the data up into a single unified portal. And that pretty much brings us towards the end of our presentation today. Thank you for listening, and does anyone have any questions?